All right, and the good news just keeps on coming. So now the gender ban. Let's try that again. Now in Arkansas, they had a first of its kind gender affirming care ban, and a U.S. judge just struck it down. So let's get to the article. A federal judge has permanently blocked the country's first law banning gender-affirming care for minors, signaling a victory for LGBTQ advocates. The ruling by U.S. District Judge James Moody Jr. on Tuesday says the state of Arkansas violated several sections of the U.S. Constitution when it banned all gender-affirming treatments for people under 18. The 80-page ruling says depriving trans minors of treatments like hormone therapy would cause them irreparable harm, that's true, and that delaying care until adulthood would force teens to go through changes inconsistent with their gender identity. Thank you. Yes. Ugh. The verdict comes after an 8-day trial in December where several of the state's witnesses admitted they didn't have experience treating transgender teens and offered no evidence to dispute decades of scientific research. Gee, I can't imagine why they didn't have any evidence. Rather than protecting children or safeguarding medical ethics, the evidence showed that the prohibited medical care improves the mental health and well-being of patients, and that by prohibiting it, the state undermined the interests it claims to be advancing. The ruling reads, the testimony of well-credentialed experts, doctors who provide gender-affirming medical care in Arkansas, and families that rely on that care directly refutes any claim by the state that the act advances an interest in protecting children. The American Civil Liberties Union brought the suit on behalf of families of transgender teens and 2 physicians. Judge Moody previously blocked the law days before it was set to take effect in 2021. Arkansas becomes the first state in the nation to ban gender-affirming care for Arkansas became the first state in the nation to ban gender-affirming care for trans minors when lawmakers passed Act 626 in 2021. Alabama, Florida, and Indiana have similar laws on the books, all of which are temporarily on hold. Oh my God, I cannot read. I'm so grateful the judge heard my experience of how this health care has changed my life for the better and saw the dangerous impact this law could have on my life and that of countless other transgender people, said Dylan Brandt, a transgender teenager and one of the plaintiffs in the case. In a statement posted to Twitter Tuesday night, Arkansas Attorney General Tim Griffin wrote, Judge Moody misses what is widely known. There is no scientific evidence that any child will benefit from these procedures, except for all the evidence that actually does say that. While the consequences are harmful and often permanent, no, they're not. We will appeal to the 8th Circuit. That's nice. You do that. So, it's just amazing how the judge heard all these scientific evidence to that this care actually benefits trans kids, and the attorney general just, la 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 la, I can't hear you, and then claims that there's no evidence when there was evidence presented, because admitting you might be wrong is apparently too difficult. Either that or they just refuse to believe that there is evidence. They desperately do not want trans people to exist, I guess, because it makes life easier for them. I mean, yeah, if you could put people in neat little categories, that would be easier. That's not the way the world works, though. So, you know. So Moody's ruling says Act 626 violated three parts of the U.S. Constitution: the First Amendment, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and the Due Process Clause of the 5th and 14th Amendments. The ACLU had argued Arkansas's law limited physicians' free speech rights by prohibiting them from referring patients to other providers for gender-affirming care. Moody agreed, saying restricting speech related only to gender transition procedures. Wait, what? Saying restricting speech related only to gender transition procedures was a First Amendment violation. Okay. But I would say then you could use that reasoning for any type of medical care, like, say, reproductive care, which includes abortions, because it should be the same thing. Because physicians are hamstrung in that case as well. So I hope that someone takes that and uses it for the abortion bans as well. All right. The ruling also finds the law violates Arkansas's due process rights by taking away parents' ability to make decisions regarding their child's health care. It adds the law discriminates against minors based on their sex, since it would not prohibit minors from accessing gender-affirming care if it aligns with their sex assigned at birth. Which, yeah, we knew that. We knew that all along, that if this was someone who was cis, who was accessing gender-affirming care, that's perfectly fine. It's like basically saying, it's just like when the transphobes say, oh, you're too young to know your gender. But surprisingly, if that person happened to be cis, they can know that from day one. That's fine. But somehow if they're trans, they couldn't possibly know. Same faulty logic. Anyway. And as I said, also the due process can be used for abortion bans, especially when those abortions are being sought by minors. Because yes, minors can get pregnant. All right. So some background. While Republicans enjoy a comfortable supermajority in both chambers of Arkansas's legislature, Act 626's passage was not without controversy. After hearing hours of testimony from advocates and trans youth, lawmakers gave final approval to the bill in April 2021. Then Governor Asa Hutchinson, a Republican, vetoed the bill, saying it would interfere with families' private health care decisions. Yes, I do remember this. In Arkansas, a simple majority vote is required in both the House and Senate to override a governor's veto. Lawmakers in both chambers easily overrode Hutchinson's veto the following day, clearing the way for the law to take effect later that year. He's actually running for president. He's running in the Republican primary. If I were him, I would tout that, because most Republicans are pro-choice. It's not anymore that Republicans are anti-choice and Democrats are pro-choice. It's most Republicans now are pro-choice as well. So he might actually be able to gain some traction with that, because that's unusual for a Republican. I don't think the mega morons are actually anti-choice. They're just racists and fascists. So maybe they are sexist and they might be against abortion. I don't know. That's a tricky one. I do hope my veto will cause my Republican colleagues across the country to resist the temptation to put the state in the middle of every decision made by parents and healthcare professionals, Hutchinson said at the time. And may I add, they shouldn't be put in the middle of any medical decision by anybody. I mean, whether it be parents or just your average adult or or a woman, pregnant woman, pregnant person, whomever. It should not, the state has no business making medical decisions. They are not doctors. If they were, they would have MD after their name and they wouldn't be lawyers. They would be working in the medical field. I mean, I just don't understand what is this obsession with telling other people what medical care they should be able to receive. In August of 2021, Judge Moody, the same judge who authored Tuesday's ruling, issued a temporary restraining order against Act 626. A federal appeals court later affirmed the lower court's ruling in August of 2022. In an 8-day trial in December, lawyers with the state attorney general's office argued it was the state's duty to protect children from irreversible medical procedures. Children aren't being given irreversible medical procedures. Puberty blockers are reversible. Depending on how long you're on hormones, it's reversible. It's because, I don't know about men and estrogen, but women have some testosterone in them. It is not like giving a girl testosterone is gonna completely screw her up, because there's no testosterone in her body. She has some, just not as much as men do, not as much as males. So, but again, and it even says here, like puberty blockers and hormones. Puberty blockers are reversible. Now, there have been some suggestions that there are some permanent side effects because, everything has a side effect. Wherever people got this idea that the only good medicine or whatever doesn't contain side effects has not been paying attention, because everything can potentially have a side effect. But puberty blockers, it's possible that whomever is on puberty blockers might end up sterile. But people who take hormones could become sterile as well. So, yeah, this is one of those things that, surprise, surprise, doctors discuss with their patients. And if they're minors, as in the case of puberty blockers, they talk to the parents and the child. It's not like children just go to a gender clinic and pick up puberty blockers or pick up hormones. That is literally not how this works. And how do I know this? I actually listen to trans people as opposed to, people who just want to fearmonger. Anyway, so several witnesses, where am I now? Several witnesses for the state spoke against gender-affirming treatments like puberty blockers and hormones, but admitted to never having prescribed them to transgender teens. Okay. So, how are you a witness then? I mean, have you seen studies on what these things do to children? And again, everything has, if these are experts, if these are people who are medical professionals, then they know that medications can have side effects. There is nothing that doesn't have a side effect. So maybe, discuss it with your patient and let them decide. I mean, some kids are at that age already know they are not interested in having kids, or that the idea of going through puberty is so horrible that they're willing to take that chance. Or it goes hand in hand. They don't want to go through puberty and they sure as hell don't want a kid. So, but it's not up to anybody to decide but the patient, and in this case, the parents and the doctor. Third-party people who have no concept of this person's situation should not be saying shit about what care that they should be receiving. All right. The court found 3 of the state's witnesses had been recruited at a meeting of the Christian advocacy organization Alliance Defending Freedom, held specifically to gather witnesses trained in various fields that would be willing to testify in favor of laws passed that limit transgender care. Gee, that's not fishy at all. While there is nothing nefarious about an organization recruiting witnesses to testify for their cause, yeah, actually, I think there is. It is clear from listening to the testimony that Professor Mark Regeneris, Dr. Paul Roos, and Dr. Patrick Lappert were testifying more from a religious doctrinal standpoint rather than required of experts, the ruling reads. And that is where this article ends. But yeah, it's good to know that there are still sane people in the justice system, because, and I hope that this continues to remain overruled. This is probably going to go to the Supreme Court. I'm pretty sure it's going to end up there, because unless the ACLU decides that, oh yeah, there's no way the Supreme Court would rule in our favor, so we're not going to keep advancing it if the ruling is not in our favor, which I highly doubt. I mean, the justices have shown that they're not clear-cut, that just because there are conservatives, a conservative majority, doesn't mean that it's a foregone conclusion that this ban would stay. And I haven't looked up the 8th Circuit, so I don't know what that makeup is. But yeah, I'm always hopeful that judges do what they're supposed to do, which is listen to the evidence and make a decision based on the evidence, and not because they find trans people icky or whatever. Or whatever the reasoning is to ban this care. Because just because these kids are not getting the care does not mean that they are not trans, or that they will not transition as adults. It just means that it's going to be harder for them, because they're going to have to go through expensive surgeries and painful surgeries to undo what puberty did, just because some schmuck in Little Rock, or whatever state we're talking about at the time, decided that they should be forced to go through puberty. Especially since this started off as care for the mentally handicapped. So for those who they literally could not go through puberty, they could not handle it. And it's not because they're trans. They just wouldn't be able to handle the changes. So it started off with them. It just became a hot button issue because trans kids started using it. So this is not just beneficial to trans kids. So like I said, good news. Hopefully, as Republicans tr- keep pushing this at the higher court, higher court, they keep getting beat down, and that will put an end to any law that tries to ban gender affirming care, because actually, like I said, I hope it sets the precedence that abortion advocates can use. Because again, if you shouldn't be allowed, if the state shouldn't be poking their nose in medical decisions in this case, they sure as hell should not be poking their nose in a woman's uterus. So with that, I am going to stop rambling, and I will see you guys in the next video.